Radio Erin, we present The Burning of Cork, a documentary on the burning of Cork City on the night of December the 11th, 1920.
Well, it was a fine night. It was a fine night. It was a fine night, I remember. As well as I remember. Of course, the usual winter night, a normal night.
The night was very dark, dry. Very dark, dry night. And as far as I remember, there were no stars at all, because you could see the reflection of the flames from the burning of the town against the cloud layer.
Well, it was calm and cool like, that's all.
The morning newspapers carried a report stating that martial law had been proclaimed in southwest Ireland, including Cork, East and West Riding, and the city of the county of Cork. They also carried familiar reports of ambushes, killings, trials, movements of prisoners, and parliamentary debates. Crown forces, particularly Black and Tans and auxiliaries, in the centre of Cork City, were in an unusually agitated mood early in the afternoon.
It was a custom at the time for the Jarvies to have a stand in Patrick Street, and the Black and Tans cordoned off the street, and they had some talk with two girls who they suspected of carrying ammunition or arms. One went across to the Jarvie car, and he took the whip from the Jarvie and got the girl to take off her stockings, boots and stockings in the street, and he used the whip on her shins.
Dillon's Cross is about half a mile from the centre of the city and a few hundred yards from what was then Victoria Barracks. Lorries of auxiliaries were ambushed there early in the evening.
About 7:30 or so that night, I was sitting down to tea with the rest of the family, and suddenly we were all brought to our feet by the sound of a grenade exploding somewhere outside, followed soon afterwards by two further explosions. Then, after a silence, there was shouting and shots, revolvers and rifle shots being fired outside. I ran upstairs to the bedroom window, and by the light of the gas lamp across the way and a public house, I saw a scattered body of auxiliaries racing down the road, shouting and shooting for all they were worth. This went on for quite a while until somebody took charge of them and got them into some sort of order and started a house-to-house search.
Normal life in the city was suspended earlier than usual. The hearing of confessions was interrupted in Mayfield Church, high up on the hill over Dillon's Cross.
So I came out of the church and I saw looking down from the hill into the hollow of Dillon's Cross, I saw the flames coming from some houses that were burning, and I heard shots being fired. I went from that to Ren's house, and there happened to be there another lady from the same terrace. And we decided that as she had only her mother at home, that we'd make an effort to get home. So the only way to get home was to, well, as we say, bypass Dillon's Cross and go down Garner's Hill to St. Luke's and go up Cassidy's Avenue to the Old Yall Road. We went down the Old Yall Road, past several Black and Tans with petrol tin, but they took no notice of us. And the young lady happened to live in the middle of the terrace, so I went down to see her in the gate, and as I turned from the gate, from the shadow of the big long wall opposite, which has now been knocked down, 4 or 5 Black and Tans came over and a voice said, "Search that man and watch the housetops."
At that time, we were living on the Ballyhully Road, almost within 100 yards of Dillon's Cross itself. No one came near our particular house, but we did hear an order being shouted outside that the houses on both sides of the road were to be searched. So with that we sat down and waited, and in came not an auxiliary or a black and tan, but a British Army officer with a private along with him. The private was dead drunk, the officer was sober, and the private had hanging around his belt half a dozen Mills grenades. He was swayed on his feet. The officer was quite nice about the whole thing, questioned us, who was in the house, was there anyone missing, so on and so forth, and really made us out a perfunctory job of it, and then he departed.
Military activity was intensified in the centre of the city, and people were escorted home or advised to leave the streets before curfew hour.
I was about to close the shop about 10 o'clock at night. And then I was walking down Patrick Street towards my hotel, in which I was staying in Princess Street, Hoskins Hotel. I was accosted by Black and Tan, who searched me and wanted to know why I was on the street. I told him I just locked up the shop, and he searched me. And I happened to have an apple in one pocket and an orange in another pocket, you see. And he was rather taken back. I imagined that he thought they were two Mills's bombs, you see. So then he thought that it'd be best if he escorted me down to the hotel to make sure that I went in and that I was telling the truth. That's what I should imagine, anyhow. Well, he said, well, you better get inside and keep inside. Just like that.
In the old opera house, down by the river, the curtain fell on the last act of The Gondoliers at 9:30.
I was with a friend who was playing Giuseppe, Jack Holland, God rest his soul, and we decided that as we had to go to the south side of the city, that it would be wiser not to attempt to go through Patrick Street. So we went up the quay, up to Cornmarket Street, and cut through Cornmarket Street and got up to the Queen's Old Castle. When before we arrived there, actually, there was firing and a lot of bustle and excitement there. So we got a bit scared, and we wended our way back the Cold Quay again, where we found a friendly house where we knew we would be welcome and also have the chance of getting a drink. We stayed there, of course, and watched out where there was a lot of movement over at the Bridewell. Black and Tans rushing here and there, and we passed the night there, occasionally looking out through the curtains. And the finish up of it was the Black and Tans, 5 or 6 Black and Tans coming down, rolling drunk, shouting and singing, and winding their way to the Bridewell, where, when they were approaching it, 3 or 4 Black and Tans rushed out and they said, well, how's it going? Oh, they said, fine, just look at that.
The first drapery and furniture stores in Patrick Street were on fire.
I remember looking out the window and seeing the Black and Tans dancing around the street with ladies' corsets on them. That was about 1 o'clock at night. I then remember or saw cans of petrol and hand torches working in the dark underneath us, laying the petrol on the floor.
Yes.
Prior to the fire. The next thing we were, the door was broken in and the front, and then they came around to the side, and the senior floor superintendent opened the door. They came upstairs and ordered us out onto the street. A machine gun was playing from an army car where the Savoy Cinema is now, down Mailer Street. And as strange as it may seem, a black and tan saved our lives that night because he was at the opposite side of the street and he would not allow his shall we say, fellow black and tan to put us out on the road, because had he done so, we'd have been shot down with this machine gun playing in the street.
The tents had mauls, heavy sledgehammers, and pinch bars, iron bars about 4 feet long, with a hook on them, a slide that you would price the door up. And they smashed every, and any place they wanted to get into, that they'd shout to them and ring the bell, kick them in the eyes. If the door wasn't opened, they'd break it in there. They thought to get out of the way. And they fired shots, but not to hit us, to frighten us. And went into Thompson's then in Winthrop Street, a wine and spirits stores. There was nobody living in it, but they smashed it in, and those saw the whiskey they could get there. Even they left some of the cases of whiskey out. They couldn't bring it with them. And they went right along then up the Princess Street. I went to a public house there, lit the light, the gas light. They went inside the counter and they took the bottles of whiskey, poured it out to the people. They give it to anybody.
When the fire brigade arrived in Patrick Street, they met a hostile soldiery.
And when we got there were 2 or 3 fires. And the Garden Street firemen was working on one of them. And we tackled the other and we beat it down. And the tent moved further on and gave more fires. And then cut the hose. And then, that didn't do either. We had more hose, and we had to get another into us. The military then, they dropped their 5-ton lorries over the hose and smashed it.
Well, when we got into Patrick Street, in other words, we were useless. They were cutting the hoses. And they were firing all around them. There was one man, Timmy Herden's son. I forget his name. I forget his other name now. He's about 6'2", but a bloody fine fella. He was going up on top of Cassius, on the ladder. He was ordered down by a black and tan with a bomb in his hand. They were out of fire at him previous to that. He was told either to get this or get down. And that meant that fire went on. So it was worse than if a fellow was outside in Flanders or in any other battlefield.
Your standpipe might be away over the other side of the street, you see, and they'd scarred the hose over and you wouldn't see him at all. You'd be at the fire. You couldn't see him in the water. Might as well be down the ground.
Up around Dillon's Cross and Ballyhooly Road, people were trying to sleep after a few uneasy hours.
Tremendous crash brought me out of the bed and onto my feet at the same time, and I saw blowing across our bedroom window a sheet of flame. That was the house next door that had been set on fire, the one that they were bringing the petrol to when I was going to bed. And this must have been about 2 hours later, and the roof of the house had collapsed, and that was the crash that awakened me. So I ran downstairs, opened the door, and stepped into the arms of a black and tan. He wanted to know where I was going to, what I was doing. I said I was going out. I said the house next door, I said, is in danger of being burnt out. I'm going out to help them to shift their furniture. And with that, some other members of my family came tumbling down behind me, so I left him to take care of them, and I moved out next door and proceeded to shift their furniture out of the house. Well, we had the furniture shifted out when the wind, which had been blowing up the road, suddenly changed direction and started blowing down the road, with the result that the house between the burning house and ours. The house that intervened there was safe, but the house on the other side of the burning house was in danger.
Young apprentices living in were forced onto the streets.
My friend and myself, being of military age at the time, were detained back and taken into the kitchen, where we were put up against the wall, and one black and tan said to the other, "Shoot him." And the other fellow, who was half drunk, said, "Do it yourself." At this particular time, we felt that was the end of things, and we had our hands over our heads, and the only recollection I always have of the situation was that I know, would I see the bullet coming out of the revolver? Well, he put me to the head of the staircase, and he told me to turn my back, which I did. I thought I'd get a bullet in the head, but instead of that I got a kick which sent me down 16 steps of stairs and landed below in the hall.
I was proceeding from Cork Street to King Street at the time, and there was 3 or 4 lorries of black and tents came along, and I had my hands in my pockets. And they gave orders to me that they shook every bone in my body to take my hands out of my pockets.
Most of the south side of Patrick Street was on fire by 11 o'clock.
I was on duty the night of the fire in the GPO. I came off duty about 11 o'clock, walked up Winthrop Street and came onto Patrick Street, which was covered in water flowing everywhere, and firemen rushing all over the place with hoses to try and stop the fire. The fire was raging then from Merchant Street to Winthrop Street and along up to Cork Street. The fire then travelled along and down Cork Street, down Robert Street, and the Munster Arcade was all in flames. Fitzgerald's was on fire, and O'Regan's, but it stopped at Tompkins. It stopped there, and that's where the street is wide now. And Mr. O'Connell's shop was at the corner of Merchant Street at that time. Of course, the whole block now was taken up by Rocha stores, and O'Sullivan's were further up then. The fire stopped there. It started as it was burning there also. There were a few scattered people about, that was all though. But black and tans everywhere, and they're racing about, and they're looting the shops. Well, they were darting in and out of houses about. And as far as I saw, they were ripping the hoses, because water was flowing everywhere about. And the firemen was doing the best they could against all kinds of odds.
Soon, organised terror gave way to comic disorder.
I went off down the lane then, and a black and tan jumped up on top of me, and he says, "Come on, we'll have a waltz." And I put down the hose, and I was waltzing with him. And I noticed he being a small man, he had a rifle with a strap, and it was protruding up to my chin. And I said to him, "Here, boss, look at where that's protruding." And I said it's rather dangerous, because he had a bottle in his pocket, and I was afraid the trigger was hitting the bottle. So he said to me, "All right," he says, "I'm sorry, Jim," he says, "I never fired a shot in Cork." And he got the rifle, and he threw it out in the middle of Patrick Street. He put me down the lane, the public house at the West Market Lane. He put me in and took down all the shelves. He says, "Here you are, don't be short," to go up the drawer and all. He says, "Here you are," he said. So at that then I left him. I was knocking around then, and I went down the Winthrop Street in the morning. I found that the boot shop was just catching on fire below Winthrop Street. And there was a hose in the ground, but the pressure was very poor, and I was trying to check that too, but I found it no use. So on looking down towards Merchant Street, I see 4 men, black and tans, 4 tall men with handkerchiefs over their faces. And when they see me, they presented their rifles with straps on them. They presented towards me and fired in my direction. They were repeating the same thing again. There was an escort over by Leicester's soldiers, sergeant and about 5 soldiers, and I went over and halfway across the road, and I called them over. So They came across and the other Black and Tans came up and they both met. They had a discussion and the Black and Tans then went into the boot shop, went to come out with 4 big bags on top of their boots, top of their shoulders. And I watched with them and they went up Drop Street.
We were drinking. And stupid drunk, I see, foreign drunk. People foreign drunk. And they had a bottle or 2 whiskey with them, and they marching home. And boots, and clothes, going away with them. They tend to throw them, they take them. And they took their share of them, they tended it. Yes, yes. And some of the people took their share too. And one man, he played on a woman. She had a bag, a coarse bag, like a bag for holding coal or coke. And she had it full of with boots. And she dragged it away, and he played the holes in her. And she dropped. But it was taken out of somebody else and took it out.
Comic disorder outside and a reasonably relaxed atmosphere under the gaslights in a public house.
We got a door and I rapped at the door. Of course I could get in there any time. You see, any time I have clothes or I go there, I get a drink. And she opened the door about that much. Piece of sheet of house full of Black and Tans. Let me in, says I want to get a drink. Which she said, too much, says I, we don't belong. I went in and I got for 3 pints. And the place was saturated with Black and Tans and guns all along the counter. And this old fella jumped over the, he was sitting on top of one of the tables. Hello, Daddy, says, what brought you in here? I said, I suppose the same yourself, a little refreshment. I see. What regiment do you belong to? Says, I belong to no regiment, says I. If we got you, would live us pay for the drink. There was another table dinner, and there was the bakehouse tins, you know. And tins, the Chester cake, I suppose you wouldn't know what it was. Big slivers of cake on a pan. And he had about 6 or 8 of them piled up on top of one another. And you have kiddies at home, says he. I have, says I. Bags of them. Anyway, say we give us something going on. I don't have a Chester cake coming home on that behalf.
Up at Dillon's Cross, 2 terrified children hid all night, snuggled together at the gable end of a house.
We were there from 7 o'clock on a Saturday night until about 3:30 on the Sunday morning. My brother and myself had the terrible experience of a drunken auxiliary to come over to the hoarding, which is only inches away from our head, and he hacking his revolver off to try and dislodge a bullet. From time to time, there used to be a lull come on, and it was kind of an inducement for anybody that wanted to come out of hiding. Or well, what I saw then made me change my mind of trying to make any further attempt of getting out. There were Black and Tans, auxiliaries, standing inside gates, and even a lorry load of them like statues. Apparently observing silence. That would remain for 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, maybe 20 minutes. Suddenly, for some reason that I don't know, they'd open up fire again, and they might shout halt, and you might hear a gate clicking down the road.
During the early hours of the morning, the City Hall and the Carnegie Library on the south side of the river were burned.
Of course, I can't give you a very detailed, because you must remember, we at this time were terrified of being shot, and we were hiding around corners. As a matter of fact, some of us felt that we shouldn't go to Mass at all, and more of us felt that we should go to Mass, and we were really risking ourselves going out to Mass there in the morning. And I saw with my own eyes the big ladder, and putting them up against the Carnegie Library, where the City Hall now stands, and burning both the Carnegie Library and the City Hall. Entry was made there through the roof by these fire brigade ladders. which were on huge wheels that they could be pushed around, you see, the streets.
Dawn broke as the flames around the centre of the city were dying. Gas lights were already out when the lamplighters came on duty.
You see, we light at that particular time of the year, approximately about 4 o'clock in the evening, you see, and we out them, then extinguish them at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I proceeded anyway to down Pope's Quay and over Patrick's Bridge, and the first thing that took me eye was something in the middle of Patrick Street, just by the Fireman's Rest now, we call it in Patrick Street, and I went over curiosity, and it was a tram burned to a cinder, one of those electric trams that was running here at the time. So I went down Merchant Street and by the light of the fire. Of course there was no other light, you see, so as I was going down Merchant Street, I happened to go down halfway and I met one of my comrades. He's dead since, God rest his soul, and so see, where are you going? So I said, I'm going down to the City Hall. So see, there's no City Hall there, so it was burned down. So we had a bit of a chat, and he was telling me his experience about he was held up by one of the tens and told to hop it as quick as he could. And so we came back the same way, and curiosity, I could see just in front of me down Park Street a few firemen and with their hoses and hosing the fire, so they might as well be throwing water into the lee.
I walked up Patrick Street and turned around Patrick Street into Melbourne Street. There I saw a man on the footpath with about a dozen pair of boots and shoes. He was sorting them out, but they were all odd shoes. There wasn't a pair in the whole lot he had.
Men were returning home after being on night duty, some hearing early mass in St. Patrick's, on their way across the city from Glenmire Station.
After mass I left St. Patrick's Chapel and walked up to Patrick Street, and short distance down that street I saw a heap of books on the pavement. Myself from the chapel with me, we picked up some and examined them. We were inclined to take them with us, but we just simply didn't. We'd throw them back on the street. And walking down further to the junction of Marlborough Street, I saw a couple of lads and this man and woman. They were just bringing a mattress out through a window when what I took to be an RIC man came over and plastered one of them over the neck with a gun. And they immediately decamped, leaving the mattress on the street with all the other rubble that was knocking around at the time, hoses, bricks, tiles and all sorts of stuff.
In the morning, the destruction of the city terrified the people. It disturbed the authorities, and the children enjoyed themselves.
Went down Patrick Street, myself and a chap named Thomas Sullivan. I walked on about 50 yards and I spotted a little three-wheel cycle, and just coming after us, I thought what a lovely present would be. And I made an attempt to get to save from being burned. And I got what you call a boot on the backside. So I was in all about my business. Well, after that, went down where the ESB showrooms are present. And we were rummaging amongst the debris. We walked up and saw a hole in the wall. So Sullivan, being a bit stronger than me, decided to have a look around. He went in and came out with a huge parcel of pipes, tobacco, motor organs, and souvenirs. We kept the motor organs, but we sold the pipes and the tobacco. About 30 shillings